All right, welcome to the Voltage Adventure channel. This is Landon doing a review on the Talaria and the Surron, the differences between the two. If you think that the Talaria is comprehensively a upgrade over the Surron, you might be in for a surprise if you stick around and watch this whole video. We will leave down in the description below timestamps for each section that we cover because it will be a little bit longer video, probably around 30-35 minutes. So if you don't want to watch every section, you can click on those and pick which section you want to watch. I will say that each section that we cover, we do reveal or bring up something in each section that we haven't seen reviewed yet on any other YouTube videos. So you may want to systematically pick through each section at different times if the video is too long. We're lucky enough to get our hands on one of these Talaria Stings, and we just wanted to point out some things that the differences we see, but a lot of things that people aren't discussing about the Talaria that I think are important and that people would find useful in trying to decide which one to purchase. So first off, as a lot of people have shown in their reviews, it comes with a bigger tire. The rim is a 1.6 instead of a 1.4 on the Surron. 1.6 on the Talaria with a I think it's the next size up tire on this. Yeah, an 80 instead of a 70.
And they're still the same brand,
Same brand, but different, but a different model tire. It is a different tread pattern. Yeah. The swing arm, as other people have mentioned too, is wider, so it can accept a bigger tire easier without having to modify a rim or offset a rim like they're doing with the Surrons. One of the things a lot of people mention too is the seat and kind of the ergonomics of the flow of the plastic and the frame seems to be more comfortable than the Surron. I tend to feel like the narrowness of the Surron is more comfortable for me, but just that aspect, the fact that it's narrow, this seat is much more comfortable. It's more comfortable to sit further forward on it. So that part is definitely better on the Talaria.
And some people, whether coming from a mountain bike background or dirt bike background, they might like the idea of, if they're dirt bike, a little bit wider bike, because for sure the Surron's less than any motorcycle in width for the most part.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, this would resemble a dirt bike a little bit more, especially where it's taller and stuff like that. And we do have all the measurements on that, which we'll mention now, because there's a bigger difference than what is said on the specs. So the Talaria seat height from the ground to the lowest part of the seat, right here in the trough, the valley of the seat, it's 33 3/4 inches, and the Surron is 31 7/8 inches high. So you're right at about 2 inches, an inch and 7/8.
And that kind of depends on sag and stuff of them. We tried to get kind of the same, but
yeah,
you could have slight differences in.
Yeah, that's with no weight on, just kind of how they come, and so that could be subjective a little bit, but kind of a ballpark seat height is going to be about 2 inches difference. The biggest difference we saw from the specs that we read online, I think I saw something about the ground clearance only being a half-inch difference or something, which is way off. This one has 2 inches, a full 2 inches more ground clearance than the Surron, which is great. And it's really good for people who are taller and can handle a taller bike. the other good thing we felt about that is that you could shrink this one down with either a smaller shock and get it to where the seat height is the same as this, and then still have the same ground clearance as the Surron. So that is kind of a big plus, because it is 12 inches high. The lowest point on the Talaria is 12 inches of ground clearance without any weight. The Surron is 10 inches without any weight, and that's the lowest point underneath the bike on the skid plate. So that was kind of exciting for us. We're both short. We like how short the Surron is, and we like the idea that with a little modification you can bring the Talaria back down to that same level. And I haven't heard anyone mention peg to seat height. This could be important for some people. We felt it was, because we realized that the height doesn't come from the frame being taller, because the peg to seat height was almost the same on the two bikes, 19 and 5/8 and 19 and 3/4 being on this one. So it's only an eighth difference. So again, you can tell that it's not the bike itself that's taller, it's all in the suspension and the clearance. So you lower this bike down, it's literally the exact same as the Surron for ride height, seat height. And so again, that was nice to know that the bike itself isn't any taller. So if you think you're getting this bike to have more leg room, you're not having any more leg room on this bike than you will on the Surron. You're just going to be farther off the ground with more ground clearance. Thing I wanted to mention is seat to handlebar height. It seems like on the Talaria, or we could tell on the Talaria, even though we have the 90 millimeter raised handlebar here
from Lunicycles.
Making this change did not make it feel like a Surron with this change. It still felt almost like a stock Surron with regular bars, even though these have the raised. So the relationship between the seat and the handlebar is naturally lower, just the geometry of the frame. And so we measured that difference, and it is on the Surron, it's 6 3/8 right here, straight over to where the gooseneck would mount, or sorry, the stem would mount. And then on the Talaria here is 4 3/4. So it's 1 5/8 roughly. Yeah, about 1 5/8 difference with this seat in relation to the handlebar, with the Talaria being lower with the handlebar, which we feel like is pretty significant, seeing how everyone feels like it feels more comfortable with higher bars. Everyone's getting aftermarket higher bars or higher stems in order to raise that up on both the Surron, and it needs to happen more so on the Talaria, is what we found.
The Talaria, you have to get a real tall stem, kind of like on that bike over there, or you could get a little bit lower, a little higher stem, and then still use a set of high bars on it, and then you could equal that and it'd feel better.
Yeah.
But we just noticed riding it, even with these bars, it just kind of feels like a stink bug sort of when you're riding it your butt.
You feel like you're more forward and over the handlebars on this one. The other and there is plenty of options to raise the bars, like we said. The other option is to go to the direct mount stem, and you can get as big a razors as you want on that stem razor, risers I should say. They're a little more expensive than your typical clamp type stem, but it's possible to get that up where you want it.
This also different turning radius on them. We noticed that this here, if you come over, bring the camera over this direction, and if you look down, you can see that this goes out right here, kind of broadens out pretty good here, where on, if you go look at the Surron, you'll see that they have it's kind of narrow through here, and then goes wider through back here behind. So when you look at it from here, and if you look straight down the handlebar on the Surron, you'll see that it turns quite a bit more. Then if you look over here on the Talaria, you'll see it just doesn't get the turning radius, which I guess doesn't matter for a lot of people, but some of us, I mean, we ride mountains and more technical terrain, so we tend to like a lot of turning radius on bikes. So for us, that's one, it's not like a deal breaker, but one thing that we just didn't like quite as much as a Surron.
People who do technical riding and trials type riding, bouncing around on things, which is kind of our style, will notice this a lot more. Immediately when I got on it, I could tell that I didn't have near the turning sharpness that you do on the Surron, and it's just a result of the frame being much more narrow.
We did notice some things that we didn't like on the shock pivot.
You can see this top main bolt right here, which is your big 8mm bolt, or I think actually it's a 10mm bolt. Yeah, 10mm bolt. And I noticed it just from riding the bike. It's loud and clanky in the back. Right here you can see that pivot joint, and you can see it moving. You can hear it. Took that apart, making sure that it has bearings, and it does have bearings, needle bearings in there. However, this bolt, or the bushing, one of them's the problem because it's just too loose. So as you can see right there, there's no way to tighten that down. That's a kind of a big issue because that's just going to get more and more sloppy
and quite noisy.
And it is very noisy to begin with. So it's clanking around like crazy whenever you bring any weight off the back tire. So anyway, not much attention to detail on that. Either that bushing has got to be a thicker walled bushing with a smaller ID, or this bolt has got to be bigger around, and these eyelets got to be drilled out. But usually bolts are a very standard size, so you either have this 10mm or you go up to a 12, which would be too big for the bushing. So not very impressed with that at all. The other linkages aren't as bad. There still is movement in them, but they're not near as bad as that big major, the main bolt there. Yeah, you could shim it with a brass. Shimming. But anyway, that just shows that the fit and finish isn't quite there, at least in that aspect.
We did notice on some of that too, didn't we? Like on the top of the...
Yeah, you can see a little bit of the grinding, more so on this side.
On the top of the suspension, it's a little rougher through here than that one, but it's not nothing that hurts anything. Yeah. It's just...
It still has...
We noticed.
Really good, pretty welds. I think overall it's built really well, similar to the Surron.
As a gearbox instead of the belt, and people have had issues with the belt in the past, you know, keeping them during especially muddy situations and stuff, more cleaning and problems with them. This is definitely better. There is one maintenance to it. You will have to change, I think it is every 1,000 kilometers, you have to change out the oil. But if you look, there's a distance there, so you can take this sprocket actually off here and go to change your gearing through there. I mean, I don't know who makes sprockets yet for it, but I'm sure they will be out, and you'll be able to change at least a couple teeth, which usually one tooth is sort of close to 4 teeth in the rear. So you could have it be the stock 44 tooth in the back and gear it up some or down just by that, where on the Surron, if you come and look over here, let me get over on this side, it's got the belt drive over here, but there is no clearance right in here above these nuts for the chain. So you can't really change this sprocket size unless you're going to go faster, but to slow it down any, you would have to, it's just all has to be done in the rear gearing on it.
Yeah, as if you can see right there, that chain is riding right on those bolts, so you can't go any smaller on that front sprocket.
So that is a plus, and it is quieter. We can confirm that it is quieter. Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to mention on this, if it's not already clear, is that as you can see, that shaft doesn't go clear through the swing arm pivot point. It is separate, unlike the Surron. That's all built in together to where the swing arm shaft is the drive shaft for the Surron. This is separate, so potentially you can take that sprocket off without disassembling anything else. We haven't confirmed that, but again, that's a possibility, and there may be plenty of sprockets already made if that's a standard spline shaft coming out of that gearbox. I would imagine that maybe some of your small pit bikes and stuff would have that exact same sprocket. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that you couldn't go much bigger, because as you can see right there, there's not a whole lot of clearance between the sprocket or the chain and the motor. But you could go smaller, and typically that's the direction you want to go if you want to gear it down anyways for more low end.
There is some things that we liked and disliked between the batteries. The controls on it, this I don't really like, because it's just, I mean, it does show kind of 20% increments.
All you get is a variation of 20%.
And then on the Surron, you're getting your, percentage, so you know exactly where you are.
That comes in handy is when you're charging the battery off of the bike. When it's on the bike, it doesn't matter, because this display on the Talaria is up on your handlebar. So you're going to see the 1% increments on the handlebar. But when you have the battery in the house and you're wanting to only charge it to a certain percentage and know exactly where you're at, this Surron is much better, because obviously you have a full readout of what your percentage is. The other thing is this all-in-one plug is really nice on the Talaria in terms of being able to take it on and off. We question whether the amperage capabilities of these spade plugs, where it's just a blade type plug, I can't imagine that being able to carry any more, and I think perhaps less current than these plugs that are surrounded. And we can't confirm that, but it'd be hard to believe if these blade type plugs can carry more current than these. We've heard people melting these down, and maybe they won't see that problem with these, so we'll just have to see with time. But no question, this is much more convenient to just have all-in-one plug to pull it off, where the Surron you've got to do both. So that's kind of a good upgrade, as long as the amperage can go through it just fine. So these charging ports, we don't really like one necessarily more than the other. This one's got a thumb release plug on it, so it's secure as well. This one's a bayonet style. These are larger pins on the Surron, so it could likely carry more current if you're doing charging off of solar or something like that and want to be able to charge at 20 amps or something. I think they could carry more current without heating up than this plug. Weight wise, 4.4 pounds difference on the batteries, and I will figure out exactly what the energy density is on that. I would imagine they're really close. I think the Surron's 174 watt hours per kilogram. 38 amp hours on the Talaria, 32 amp hours on the Surron. And that might be a perfect ratio on the weight difference as well. So being 4.4 pounds heavier on this one and 6 amp hours more. So we will
Going into the machine, Sean.
Oh yeah, let's so we'll put this into the machine here. Seems to be a little bit easier actually to put into the bike than the Surron as well. And there is this this locking mechanism here. So when the battery comes down and hits that, it swings this top lever up and locks the battery in. Doesn't lock it in necessarily, but what it does is there's no groove on this battery, as you can see, so it's not locking it down. What it's doing is it's just forcing it forward to try and minimize the vibration of the battery. So it's forcing it forward on these rubber portions on the front of the battery compartment, which is a pretty nice feature. And the battery does seem to slip in a little simpler than the Surron. Well, of course not now, but typically it does. There we go.
Wires.
Yeah, these wires are a little bit routed weird. So that slips in pretty easy, and again, this plug is super convenient and simple to plug in. So with it being all in one like that, get it in place. Has a really nice switch on there that's kind of a locking switch. Slides down and then releases. And then again, that one just bayonets on.
Okay, we're back here in this grass field here, and we got the two bikes, and we're gonna do a little comparison on like a drag race across, kind of starting maybe at 2 miles an hour, and so that you're not getting pilling out and all of that, 2 or 3 miles an hour, and just show. We do know that the Talaria, right at that very, very bottom end, that wheel just shoots up, but then it's like gone after that. I mean, very punchy at the bottom. Super sensitive, extremely hard to ride, especially in technical situations. Not nearly as friendly. And so we're gonna do a race. My dad here is 10 pounds lighter than me, and he's on the Talaria. I'll be on the Surron, and we'll just kind of show like a drag race across here. Granted, they're both 62 sprockets, which should help the Talaria through the mid-range, at least the bottom and mid-range, but we're not finding it to really change it much at all. And then the top end, of course, the Surron just leaves it, but we'll show that in the video right now.
So with the Surron on the left, the Talaria on the right, they don't get a really even start, and the Talaria fades out of the picture a little bit on this first race, but the Surron did pull away from it the entire time with the heavier person on it. They do another race here where you can see them more evenly in this video. Again, the Surron on the left, Talaria on the right, kind of pulls away the entire time. Just a few videos here, you can see the difference. At that point they swapped, so now the Talaria is on the left, the Surron on the right, with the Surron having the lighter person on it now by 10 pounds. So not a big difference, but okay, one more thing on these. As you've seen in some of the other previous reviews, people talk about the Regen being on the fly adjustable, which is great. The Surron has 3 positions of Regen, or 3 levels of Regen, but not on the fly. This one has 4 levels of Regen, and you can just adjust it up and down as you're driving. You don't have to stop or do anything. It's just an up and down thing. So I'll just show you here what it looks like if that'll pick up this screen. You can see right here it says level 4 there. You can go down to 3, 2, and 1.
down in the right-hand corner.
So what we've done here is just put an amp clamp on the battery, and I'm going to try and get a video of how much current you can push back into the battery just coming down this small hill, this hill over here. It's pretty impressive. We did a little bit of testing the other day and found out that it can do some pretty good amps coming down through. So I'll take you along for the ride and let you see what we can get. The Talaria has a 4th level of regen, which makes it significantly better or more powerful than the Surron. We were able to see as much as 16.5 amps going back into the battery just coming down a small hill. And the holdback on the Talaria was markedly better than on the 3rd level or highest level on the Surron. We find that the amount of brake wear you save is extremely significant on the Talaria, and is very significant on the Surron, but at least double or triple brake savings on the Talaria. And just the automatic keeping you slow going down steep hills, which is great. So big plus with the Talaria on that. I love that feature. I mean, it's almost where I'm willing to look past some things just because of that on-the-fly regen level option, and the fact that it goes to a so much higher regen capability. That's insignificant to a lot of you folks out there. I realize that many of you are in the Midwest and on the East Coast, where there's not as many mountains and stuff. We do 90% mountain riding, and so it's going up high elevation and coming down. There's big elevation gains and descents, and so having that regen at the tap of a button on the fly is a massive improvement. All right, here we are on the Surron now. Try and show you some amps on the way up, and then regen coming down as well. If you take the frame, basically the frames or the bones of the bikes only, and weigh them together, there's not a big difference. Roughly 10 pounds, 10 or 11 pounds. Because the fork on this one, on the Surron, is heavier than the Talaria with the SRT upright fork. And the tire and the wheel on the Talaria is heavier than the Surron by about a pound and a half, probably, between the wheel and the rear tire. So those kind of offset each other. This fork could be 2 to 3 pounds heavier than the RST fork, though. So this bike came in with the battery at about 125 pounds. Now, you guys might get different readings because you're using a different scale. The important thing here is the difference between the bikes. As long as you're weighing them on the same scale, that's what we want to find, is the difference between the two bikes. Again, this one came in at 125 pounds. The Talaria came in at 140 pounds. There's also a difference in the battery weight, 4.4 pounds difference in the battery, with the Talaria being heavier at 38 amp hours versus 32 amp hours. Now, the ratio between the energy density and the weight is almost identical, as you saw in the video, or you will see in the video. The Talaria bike is, like I said, 28.4 pound battery with a energy density of 175 watt hours per kilogram, and this one comes in at 24.4 pounds roughly, or 24 even. So again, about a 4.4 pound weight difference, but at 32 amp hours. And this one comes in 174 watt hours per kilogram. So again, they're within 0.5% almost as far as energy density. So the batteries are exactly the same for weight to energy density ratio. So you have to subtract that when you weigh the two bikes, because you're getting more with the greater weight of the Talaria battery. You're getting more range, more capacity. So again, with a 15 pound difference between the two bikes, minus the battery weight of 4 pounds, brings you down to close to 11 pounds. But then the heavier wheel on the Talaria, if you put the same wheel as the Surron on the Talaria, you'd be down another pound and a half. That puts you around 10 pounds. But then this fork is heavier, so it brings you back up to 11 or 12 pounds. So that's kind of where we figured it would be, is right at that between 11 to 12 pound difference between the two bikes, which isn't much. And so we were more impressed by that than we were by the specs that we saw on the difference in the bikes. I think most of the stuff we've seen is around 18 pounds difference. That's just not the case. The Talaria bike, you're getting the upgraded battery, the bigger back tire, and for that you gain 12 pounds plus whatever else makes it weigh more, probably the gearbox. So there you go. That's the difference in the weight, and it's not much. I think that's kind of a plus for the Talaria, being that it's not that much heavier, and you get the taller bike that some people want, the bigger back tire, more capacity in the battery. However, probably a lighter weight fork that may not be as good. That's up for debate. We're not going to say either way on that. But this one definitely is more beefy and more material on it. So with that being said, we'll wrap it up, and appreciate you guys sticking through and watching our video. Please subscribe, comment, and like the video. We're going to be bringing you, we already have a whole bunch more videos lined up discussing X-ring versus O-ring chains, and the testing that we did on that. A little bit more on going tubeless on these bikes. We'll also, if people are interested in these fenders that we have, which are probably the best fender that is almost a plug and play on these, with a good coverage, that we're a dealer for. So if you have interest in those, shoot a comment below and we'll do a video on that. Yeah, so anyways, we like to dive in deep into these things and really discover things that other people haven't discovered, and bring you new content, or at least new things to think about when you are researching and looking to purchase one of these e-bikes, other e-bikes, e-pedal bikes, things like that. That's what we're dedicated to. So thanks for watching.